researchers have been able to show us, and this is a pretty amazing thing to say, the mystery has always been, when we look at genetic codes, when we see those amino acids lined up on the double helix, what is it that determines whether the amino acids, whether the antennae are turned off or on? Well, within just recent years, through the HeartMath Institute, people like Dan Winter working with HeartMath, what has been discovered is this, is that there is a switch that turns off and turns on where those coding sites lie, and that the switch for that turning off and turning on is what we call emotion. And this is the first time that we've ever seen the patterns of emotion directly physically linked to human genetic material. So what I'm saying is this: when you look at the double helix, the green is the double helix of the DNA on this image. What Dan Winter says is the long wave of emotion programs this shorter wave of DNA. So emotion, the long wave, the long red wave of emotion, wherever this wave of emotion touches, where it crosses this double helix, is what determines where the site is that code will either be turned off or turned on. If we're going to have an antenna at this site, it will only be turned on if the wave of emotion crosses this double helix. Well, this is really interesting for us because two things. First of all, the waves of emotion, researchers have determined that you and I are primarily capable of only two emotions, many derivatives of those emotions, and two primary emotions, fear and love. Fear and love. Well, fear is a long, slow wave of emotion. So this wave of fear is a long, slow wave and touches relatively few sites on this DNA. So an individual living in fear is limited to the number of antennae that they have available to them. Whereas an individual living in the pattern of love, this is love in DNA, you can see it's a higher frequency, shorter wavelength. We have many more potential sites for coding along that genetic pattern. This information, this is amazing. This is the first time we've ever had a hard digital link between emotion and genetics. And what we're saying is this, that the way you interpret and perceive emotions in your lives directly, linearly affects and determines how your body responds genetically. The patterns of light align themselves along the axis of this DNA. What they can say is, what we can say from this, is that DNA entrains light. Now the really interesting thing was when they took the DNA out of the vacuum, the light was still entrained in that pattern, even though the DNA wasn't there. And the researchers call this now the phantom DNA effect. And what they are saying, what we can say very accurately, is that light responds to our genetic material. And in that, with that piece of information now, for the first time, what we have is a link between emotion, DNA, and light, which is what our world is made out of. As emotion, thoughts, love, fear, whatever they are, as emotion determines the patterns and the codes in the DNA, and the DNA determines the patterns of light. DNA serves as a template for the patterns of light around us. For the first time, we have hard, physical, direct evidence, digital evidence, that our emotions and our thoughts directly affect the physical world around us. And that is an amazing thing for me to be able to say to you. Not only does it affect the world around us, it affects the world within us. The energetic systems of the body, the nervous systems, the nervous pathways, and the chakras are all determined through our experience of emotion and feeling, how emotion and feeling trip the switches of genetic material in our body, resulting as an expression.